How one supply chain failure can collapse a military in 72 hours. In war, bullets don't fight themselves. Tanks don't roll without fuel. Radios don't chatter without batteries. Behind every soldier on the battlefield, there's a massive, intricate system quietly delivering the essentials: fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies, spare parts, and even tiny components, like computer chips. This is the military's supply chain, and it's far more fragile than most people realize. Now imagine this. A key node in that network suddenly fails. A crucial border crossing is shut. A port is incapacitated. Spare parts stop arriving. Fuel deliveries are disrupted. Magazines run dry. Aircraft sit grounded. Within 72 hours, the chaos spreads. Units can't move. Fighters can't fly. Frontline forces lose ammunition. Command begins to slow. The military machine, once a titan, grinds to a halt. This isn't fiction. History has shown us again and again that supply failures aren't just logistical headaches. They are strategic catastrophes. And in a modern war where armies rely on hyper-connected systems, a single break in the chain can collapse entire forces faster than a battle can be fought. What is a military supply chain, and why it matters? To understand how fast a military can fall apart, we need to understand what a supply chain actually does. A military supply chain is the network of production, distribution, storage, and delivery of all materials an army requires, from the largest equipment to the smallest component. It includes fuel and energy. U.S. Army Brigade consumes 600,000 gallons of fuel per day in high-intensity combat. Ammunition and weapons. A 155mm artillery battery fires 10 tons of shells per day. Food and medical supplies, 3 meals per soldier daily, plus medical material. Spare parts and maintenance tools. 40% of U.S. military budget dedicated to sustainment. High-tech parts like semiconductors and optics, 90% sourced from civilian supply chains. Transport systems, ships, trains, trucks, aircraft, moving 800-plus tons daily for division-level operations. Every one of these elements has multiple links connecting factories, depots, transport hubs, and frontline units. Break one link, and the rest can quickly unravel. Modern military logistics statistics reveal the scale. U.S. military operates 500-plus bases globally, requiring constant resupply. Pentagon spends billions annually on logistics and sustainment. A single carrier strike group requires 1.5 million gallons of fuel per week. Ukraine fires 5,000, 7,000 artillery rounds daily, 2023-2024, requiring tons of ammunition delivery. Examples from history, when logistics lost the war. The most famous military victories and defeats were often decided not by battlefield skill, but by logistics. Disaster. Napoleon's 1812 invasion turned catastrophic not because of Russian armies, but because the French supply lines were stretched thousands of miles across hostile terrain. Troops ran out of food, forage, and supplies. The Grande Army collapsed, not in battle, but due to an overstretched logistics network. Key logistics failures. Horses died at rate of 10,000 per day from lack of forage. Supply wagons couldn't navigate Russian roads during autumn mud season. Forward depots overrun before main army arrived. Return march saw army consuming horses. Leather equipment, eventually resorting to cannibalism. German Wehrmacht in World War II. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, was derailed when supply lines were stretched beyond capacity across the vast Eastern Front. Fuel, food, and ammunition shortages crippled momentum and turned a blitzkrieg into a grinding stalemate. Logistics breakdown specifics. Only 3,000 trucks delivered supplies requiring 25,000 trucks. Fuel shortages stranded panzer divisions 100-plus miles from objectives. Ammunition rationing reduced artillery effectiveness by 60%. Winterization supplies never reached front lines before temperatures dropped. Battle of Stalingrad. German forces found themselves unable to resupply troops trapped deep in Soviet territory. Cut off from depots and supply routes, they starved and surrendered, turning what could have been a strategic victory into utter defeat. Allied push after Normandy. Even Allied forces in World War II faced logistical roadblocks. After D-Day, their advance nearly collapsed because supply depots and forward lines couldn't keep up with the rapid offensive, until ports like Antwerp were secured. The Red Ball Express emergency supply operation. 6,000 trucks operating 24/7, moving 12,500 tons daily, over 700-mile round trips required to compensate for lack of functional ports operations couldn't be sustained beyond 12 weeks without port capacity. Why supply chains fail. The critical points of vulnerability. Modern militaries are global webs of production and transport. They depend on dozens of industries, infrastructure nodes, and regional supply hubs. A single failure can propagate disaster rapidly. Here's how things can spiral out of control. Port closures and transport disruptions. Modern militaries rely on seaports, railways, and highways to move vast quantities of goods, from fuel tankers to armored vehicles. If a major port or rail hub is disabled by an attack or blockade, supplies can back up within hours. Modern port dependency examples. 90% of U.S. military equipment to Europe transits through 5 major ports. Single large port handles 10,000 plus containers monthly for military operations. Port of Antwerp. Delayed 3 months. Allied advance stalled. Extended war by estimated 6 months. Current vulnerabilities. U.S.-European deterrence initiative depends on Bremerhaven, Rotterdam, Antwerp ports. China could blockade 90% of Taiwan's fuel imports by controlling 2 ports. Suez Canal closure 2021 Ever Given incident blocked 12% of global trade, including military. Logistics. Cyber supply chain attacks. In an age of digital warfare, hackers targeting logistics networks can disrupt distribution schedules, reroute shipments, corrupt inventories, or disable tracking systems. Real incidents. 2020 SolarWinds breach, compromised Pentagon logistics tracking systems, undetected access for 9+ months. 2023 Volt Typhoon, Chinese app infiltrated U.S. military logistics networks. Pre-positioning for disruption. Transportation Command relies on 300+ contractorate systems each. A potential vulnerability. Over-dependence on foreign suppliers. Many militaries now rely on global supply chains for components such as electronics, metal alloys, and energy products. Critical dependencies. 80% of rare earth elements, missile guidance, optics, sourced from China. European NATO relies on U.S. for 70% of precision munitions. Israel imports most of military components from U.S. Europe. India depends on Russia for 60% of spare parts for Soviet-era equipment. 3 days to break down how fast it happens. Let's visualize how an entire military supply chain can collapse within 72 hours. Hour 0. A critical node fails. An enemy attack disables a major supply hub, perhaps a port, rail terminal, or logistics software system. The node that normally handles fuel, ammunition, or spare parts goes offline. Within minutes, the supply chain loses routing information, sees shipments delayed, misallocates critical components. Military leadership receives warnings, but the sheer volume of disruption overwhelms response systems. Within 12 hours, first ripple effects. Forward units begin to notice shortages. Fuel deliveries are delayed. Maintenance parts fail to arrive. Munition stocks grow dangerously low. Vehicles and aircraft that require consistent servicing lose readiness. Units at the front cannot operate at full capacity. Logistics officers begin to scramble to reroute supplies, but backlogs grow quickly. 24 hours. Secondary failures. The effects spread like a contagion. Fuel shortages slow troop movements. Weapon platforms accumulate maintenance backlogs. Supply trucks back up at alternate routes. Command confidence falls as communications tax out. Allocations are delayed. Prioritization becomes chaotic. Troops begin rationing supplies. 48 hours. Combat effectiveness plummets. Supply losses now start hitting combat units. Tanks sit idle from a lack of fuel or spare tracks. Aircraft are grounded for lack of parts. Soldiers ration, leading to fatigue. Ammunition reserves shrink below safe levels. Morale begins to deteriorate as soldiers realize critical missions can no longer be supported. 72 hours. Operational collapse. By day 3, the effects are catastrophic. Major combat operations slow or cease. Frontline commanders cannot execute orders due to missing support elements. Logistics planners can no longer keep up with needs. Strategic decision-makers are forced into retrenchment or withdrawal. Historical comparison. German 6th Army at Stalingrad required 300 tons daily airlift, received 90 tons. After 76 days, combat effectiveness. 0%. After 72 hours without adequate supply, combat effectiveness had already dropped to 30%. Warzone Masters maps cascading failures because understanding the hour-by-hour collapse reveals why logistics isn't a support function. It's the foundation. And when it cracks, everything built on top collapses in 3 days. Case studies. Supply chains that failed fast. World War II. D-Day and the logistics gap. After the Normandy landings, Allied forces pushed deep into France. But for weeks, their advance stalled. Not because of German resistance, but because supplies couldn't catch up. Without ports capable of handling heavy shipments, shore captured but heavily damaged. Antwerp not operational until November 1944. Logistics lines jammed, extending the war by an estimated 6 months. Supply crisis metrics. Required 26,000 tons daily to support advance achieved only 10,000 tons via Red Ball Express Patton's 3rd Army halted 100 miles short of Rhine River. Out of fuel operation Market Garden failure partially attributed to logistics overstretch. This was a blunt example of how even victorious armies can temporarily collapse when supply fails. Ukraine conflict. Russian logistics failures. 40-mile convoy stalled outside Kyiv due to fuel, food, maintenance failures, Ukrainian HIMARS strikes. Destroyed 2,000-plus logistics vehicles. Ammunition shortages. Reduced Russian artillery from 50,000 shells daily to 10,000, 15,000 forced operational pauses to reconstitute supply system. The unsung system that wins or loses wars. Armies don't fail because they lack courage. They fail because they lack powder, fuel, parts, or food, the very things most people never think about. In less than 72 hours, one disruption, whether from enemy action, infrastructure failure, or cyber attack, can undo weeks or years of preparation, leaving a military unable to fight, maneuver, or defend. The next global military collapse might not happen on a battlefield. It might happen in a warehouse, a port, or a server room. If this video changed how you think about war and the invisible forces that keep militaries alive, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep breakdowns, and hit the notification bell. Comment below. Do you think future wars will be decided by logistics failures or battlefield tactics? Stay informed, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.